It'll be fine.
And we'll give folks a minute or two to hop on. I have like material that I can do like the whole pre-roll stuff. Um but I haven't been organized enough to really deploy it properly. Because George made me all those beautiful intro screens, and I really should like
Yeah.
set those, do some kind of like set it so that it's like stream starting soon, like do it like 5 minutes before or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, hello, friends that are going to hang out with us today. It's Friday. Feels good.
Hmm.
How's the weather in Texas?
Today is like the first day that is not so hot you want to tear your face off. So that's
Hooray!
good.
Oh,
It's
that's
pretty
wonderful.
aces today.
So, hopefully, you can enjoy it a little
Yeah.
later today. Get out and be outside instead of confined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so this morning, I went out and floated down the river, and that was,
Ooh.
yeah, it's like the thing to do in Central Texas is just float down the river in an inner tube. So that's what I was doing this morning.
Yeah, there's no face tearing in these video games that we're going to look at today either, because
Uh,
this is true. I so actually, as I was pulling all these screenshots and things, I sent a couple of them to my mother, um, and I was kind of describing, what the game was, and she was just like so thrilled that there are like I think she described it as like, I love that there's such gentle games that exist, like,
yeah,
that aren't just based on killing something, and she loves the
right.
idea of it being about exploration. I'm like, if there's a way to get my mother into video games, it's probably this sort of game where you just walk around and enjoy the exploration of it.
Definitely. I'm all about gentle games. I'm not into the shooty pew pews, like at all.
Shooty pew pew.
Yeah. Zelda's like as about as violent as I would ever go with a video game.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
there's just so many of those available. It is.
mhm.
I always. I always learn so much of what I should be playing from you. So for the stream, I can't remember which Nakfigum I met you at. What was your first one?
My first Nacvigum was 2016 at Davidson.
Oh, okay. So that was Neil's. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one where we all went back to his house and just like hung out the one night.
Yes.
That was so fun.
I was like, ooh, is this how conferences work? It was my first ever conference.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was like, I don't
Yeah.
know how
I
conferences work.
consistently you give some of my favorite talks ever. Always.
I do
I
my
love the
best.
games you focus on. I love the way that you structure your analysis and deploy it for us, even the non-theory folks. And this article is a really good example of that, because like you get into some modeling that I'm like, I don't know what that is. But at no point did it prevent me from understanding what some of the soundscape analysis stuff you were doing.
Good.
You very clearly explain it, and maybe I can ask for like a quick primer when we get to some of those moments too.
Sure.
But yeah, I met you at that NACFGM, I'm sure. I can't imagine. I don't remember. But I think I met most of everyone I've met at a NACFGM.
Hmm.
And yeah, Ryan finished his chapter for me this morning, so he's here. Hello.
Yay.
Welcome. Yeah, I think we only have I haven't counted how many have yet to come in today, but I think pretty much everybody's going to be on time. At least nobody has said that they
Perfect.
won't be. So I
Yeah.
guess we'll find out. But that's pretty exciting. And you have a book that's pretty close, right? Don't you have one
Um,
in progress with Kate?
yeah. So our the deadline for first drafts from contributors has just passed, and some people it's they're allowed to be late. It's fine.
There
I mean, I'm just gonna confess it right here. My chapter is gonna be late, so
you go.
that's where we're at. Um, yeah, because I have the one with Kate and then also the Oxford one, and so I was like kind of focusing on the Oxford one. And I mean, Pete's in the same boat. Like Pete sent us an email. He's like, I just have to focus on the Oxford and then I'll get to you. And Kate and I were like, we 100% understand this, like us too.
Yeah, I pulled out of the Oxford one, so I didn't deal with all of that. Yeah, I think folks are, you know, doing our best with low executive function, and
It's true. Yeah.
if it honestly, I'm of the mind that if things get too far, where like I think Ryan was telling me last night that he pulled out of the Oxford book. Like sometimes we just got to make that call. I
Yeah.
think that stuff is never wasted though. It's like the chapter I was gonna write for Will is gonna go in my monograph. Like it is
Yeah.
100%. It was disability study stuff, so it's like,
Yeah.
oh well, this will just go in my book. So,
Hmm.
and I'm really excited about it. It was like really. I was very excited about where it was, and then I had like personal life stuff that prevented me from finishing it, and it was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I like to think that like, not to be too fatey, but I think sometimes things happen for a reason when it comes to those publications. Like
That's fair. Yeah.
sometimes it's not worth killing yourself and just saying like, I'm just gonna put this somewhere else.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And like I always think, because you get at minimum like 6 months to write a chapter, and it's like that's so much time. But
but
inevitably,
it's
like
not.
life stuff happens.
Yeah.
Because yeah, in the time I was writing the Oxford chapter, like I got a new job. I had to move cross country. I started the new job. And like now I'm very busy. And I'm also writing all these other things. And then I'm also attending other conferences. And I'm taking classes for my MLAS degree. It's
Hmm.
like stuff just kind of piled up.
Yeah, and Karen's actually going to index our book, so yeah, we're
Amazing.
and it was we had told authors final chapters on the 10th, but then Lisa got back from a conference, got COVID, and I think just like
No.
in the mix of that sent an email saying the 15th, and I was like, we said the 10th, but it's fine.
Yeah.
I It'll be okay.
Yeah.
um
And at least for first draft chapters, like we're being lenient on the deadline.
Yeah, it's final draft when you're like, okay,
Right.
like
Final
we
draft is
can't be late back to our publisher. But yeah, in the middle, it's like you can kind of be like starting on the editing for the ones that you already have, and then as long as folks don't get to the point where you're like, okay, I've now seen two drafts from everybody else.
exactly.
Within reason, you can kind of spread out the workload a little bit, and that's also why I think that when the editors' chapters aren't necessarily in with the rest, it kind of all works out in the wash.
For
But
sure.
anyway, that's a really, really exciting thing because I actually assign this one with
Yeah.
Kate's Stardew chapter because you two are just very. You pair nicely. You both talk about soundbox and soundscapes, and you draw on some of that same literature, the Schaefer and the Westerkamp,
Hmm.
um, and it's a really fun thing to give students because it's just like nothing else in the literature, and they're always like, wow, I really like this was so different from the types of games I normally look at, or a lot of them really enjoyed it. So that was the first time I've assigned it as like supplemental reading in the past, but this was the first time I
Hmm.
made a discussion about it and paired them, and it went really well.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
so these are undergraduate non-majors. So again, I always
Hmm.
like to remind people of that. Like I don't have music majors, and I throw a lot of real literature at them, and it can get kind of intense, but they know it's low stakes. They know it's like, I don't expect you to know all this because you are not the audience for
Hmm.
most of these things. It's nice if the language is accessible and you follow along, but in terms of having the musical background, this is geared to people who have those backgrounds, or can at
Definitely.
least follow along enough. So anyway, let's jump into this lovely
I'm so excited to see your
article.
screenshots.
Oh my gosh. So as I was telling Elizabeth, I played the game up to the kind of final area, that is the focus of the case study here, leaving Lindau. And as I did so, I was taking screenshots to use in the PowerPoint, and there were too many, and I couldn't pick. So just about every screen in this PowerPoint is a different screenshot from the game. So,
We just
hello.
have like a slideshow of the cut screenshots later.
Oh, they're so beautiful. So yes, here is our full citation this week. Gray areas, analyzing navigable narratives. I've had to practice that. Navigable is a hard word.
Navigable narratives.
Navigable narratives in the not so uncanny valley between soundwalks, video games, and literary computer games. This was from JSMEG number 1, the very
Woo.
first, and it's great. So where did this one come from? I know we've seen work from you on like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, some of which is also gonna end up in my book with Karen.
Amazing. So like what was the impetus
Yeah,
for
where did this
this?
one come from, and kind of what was the process?
Um, I was studying soundbox and soundscapes broadly, and also, working on video game music. And so, since my first like paper, my first project that was Ludomusicology was with the Tellus principle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like really interested in how sound builds this reality because that's the whole thing with my Tellus principle talk is that there's the spoilers, like the main character kind of realizes they're in the matrix when there's a schism between what you hear and what you see, like things start to kind of break apart. And I was studying a lot of Janet Cardiff and other like kind
Love.
of 90s getting into electronic and like using augmented reality sound walks. I was studying that for my dissertation, and I was like putting together, I was like, there's a really clear connection. I just have to make it between like video games and these like augmented reality sound walks and building an environment and a reality with sound. And so especially with walking simulators is kind of what I came up with. Like, more so than most other video game genres, and also more so than just augmented reality sound walks, and more so than also the literary computer games, which I talk about a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, yeah, walking simulators are just at this really nice centric point of the Venn diagram of those like media, um, where reality is crafted through both the visuals and the sound. And so coming at it from a sound perspective, like you can have these unrealistic things that become realistic. And you can create this schism or you can kind of meld things together with sound. And so kind of how do the composers create a soundscape and how do they make it either holistic or not? Like how do they work on that? How does it work? So that was the whole impetus. And so I came up with this article and also say right here, and I'm sure we'll say it at the end again. So my Oxford chapter that's coming out later is kind of this article 2.0, and it's
Nice.
going to have so it's a lot of the same like themes and points, but I look at a lot of different other case studies. So I have 4 different case studies that kind of are kind of in different areas of that centric part of the Venn diagram and kind of how to approach those and like other things that composers focus on. If there's more emphasis on different things like on voice or on just background sound like birds and stuff.
Oh, I can't wait. We'll have you back on if you're, unless you have a terrible time today, in which case you'll say no. But
It's going pretty rough so far. I'm kidding.
so yeah, you submitted this just like any other regular article, or did they ask you to submit it?
um, any regular article. So it was at either the 2019 or 2018 Navigable. Because Tim Summers like made the announcement. It was like this is the thing we're doing. And so I talked to him at break and I was like, hey, well, I want to make this, the talk I just gave. So it must have been 2018. Yeah, it was 2018. I was like, I would like to turn that into an article, and it's gonna be my first article, but would you be interested? He was like, yeah, like that was a fantastic talk. Like, go ahead.
Oh,
And
great.
as everyone knows, Tim Summers is just an absolute like angel on earth. He is like
Yes.
the best of us. Um,
I
so
agree.
like he was really supportive the whole way through. He was like, just submit it and we'll see. And it got accepted with revisions and he helped me revise and yeah, so like that was a wonderful experience for like a first article.
Yeah.
um yeah, the whole thing was just wonderful, and I'm so honored to be in the inaugural issue of the
I
journal.
know, that's so cool.
So good. Yeah, so
Love
I
that.
submitted like any article.
Very cool. So yeah, that seems like a nice ringing endorsement for. I know they're always looking for submissions. So
Hmm.
actually, on my to-do list for the year is to finally do one for them because I haven't
Do
attempted
it.
it. And I have. I was when I had Elizabeth on. Medina Gray,
Other one.
we were talking about the journal, and I kind of pitched. I was like, I have 2 different things. They're very different. I don't think the average anonymous reviewer would necessarily pin either of them to me, which is kind of fun. They're kind of like one-offs that don't go anywhere else, but I just would like an excuse to work on them. And I was like, which one sounds good to you? And Elizabeth's like, they're both interesting. I was like, well, good. Okay. So I'm
You
gonna do a
could
little
send
digging this
both.
summer and kind of see literature wise where I stand and like what supports I have for either one, which one will be more viable. But hopefully I'll get something in there at some point
Definitely.
because I have been meaning to. I've read
Do
some
it.
really great ones as a reviewer for them.
Yeah, it's been such a treat also reviewing for them.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've reviewed two or three, so
Introduction. So here you differentiate walking simulators. You get a little more specific here, suggesting like maybe that's an umbrella term, but you're going to use navigable narratives in this case. And you explain a little bit why that is. And is this your term, navigable narratives? I think it is.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I came up with the term. I did get help from my thesis advisor, Ben Levy, because I really wanted the onomatopoeia. Gotta have, or not the onomatopoeia,
The
alliteration.
alliteration,
But
yeah.
the other
I
wordplay.
do a lot of things for alliteration. A lot of
Yeah,
titles.
navigable narrative. Um, yeah, I'm trying out calling it like NN,
Mm-hmm.
so with the acronym of it. We'll see. Um, yeah, so calling it that instead of walking simulators. Like walking simulators is sort of the accepted and more broadly understood term. Um, so this is a long pull quote. I'm going to assume it's the pull quote that explains what I'm about to say. um, basically, like it kind of has negative connotations.
Mm-hmm.
It came about initially as a diss.
Mm-hmm.
Like this game is just a walking simulator. Like
Right.
there's not even action. It's not even fun. You
Implying like
just
there's a
walk.
it's a fault of the gameplay instead of the whole point. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's like it's not a fault. It's not a bad thing. Um, but so, that's kind of what that that's how that term came about, and it has been more or less reclaimed. I think because games have been winning awards. Like everybody's gone to the Rapture and Firewatch, just took the world by storm and won all these awards.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like big name walking simulators. Um, And so now it's not so much a dirty word anymore, but it still has that history to it. And then I wanted to rebrand it because, give it a more positive spin of like what it actually offers and what's good about the game instead of like this diss of like what it's lacking was just a walking simulator. So
Yeah.
doing navigable narrative, because these games really tend to be story heavy. Like the whole thing is it's an interactive story in some way, and they develop these beautiful realities so that you can engage with the story. And then it's all about how you move through it. And it can be how you choose to progress the story, if there's like dialogue options,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be the direction you go. It could be, if there's a forking path, which direction you go first. So with Dear Esther, you have to play it all the way through a couple times to get all of the parts of the story and to get all the dialogue because there are forking paths. So there's paths that like kind of go out and come back together. And you'll hear different parts of the story depending which route you take. So
Yeah.
to get the whole thing, you have to do both. So in that way, it's very literally a navigable narrative. It's choose your own adventure. Like it's linear, like you're going to get to the end and the ending's the same, but you'll get different parts of the story depending on the way you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a trait of this genre. In some way, you move through it either spatially and or kind of like in within the narrative. Um, but it's up to you to navigate that.
Yeah, which is a good summary of the quote here, but we'll read it real quick just
Yeah.
for it's good to have both, right? Have it on screen and read it. Participants' experience in a navigable narrative is often quite similar to that of a sound walk, especially a virtual reality sound walk. The game composer audio designer creates an intricate soundscape through which the participant moves, and with the main focus on the story and gradual travel, the participant has more time and capacity than in a typical video game to build meaning from the sound walk they perform. One of the major relationships navigable narratives have with sound walks is the breakdown of diegesis in the soundscape the participant takes in, which is unlike most video games. I feel like alarms every time diegesis comes up. It's like, Andrew,
I know.
Andrew.
Andrew Powell's like, what was
Like on the
that?
single handed crusade to like destroy or replace diegesis with other ideas.
We'll get there eventually. This is from
But it is
2020. This is old stuff, Andrew.
it is nice how many of us tacitly talk about how complicated diegesis is in video games. Even if we're kind of like using the terms, there is a lot of, yeah, it's not quite so straightforward. Nor is it in
Mhm.
film. I mean, plenty of like modern theory on film has shown how complicated those boundaries are as well. So,
For sure.
but I think in games it's like ramped up in a lot of ways, and it's like made really apparent to the players. So we have a toolkit here. This is the uncle's cottage in the back in his gorgeous little garden. So I love these backdrops. So the toolkit involves Marie Schaefer, Hildegard Westerkamp, Janet Cardiff on soundscapes and sound walks and things like that. Alison Warren on narrative time versus real time. Again, talking about you have to replay, so you're sort of experiencing time in weird ways in games in general, but also these where you might go, oh, I want to go back and see that scene that I missed, or you look up a walkthrough and find out that you missed something. Or to get a different ending. To theorize these as literary computer games, we use the Warren theory, and then Elizabeth Medina Gray's work on modular analysis and themes. So Leaving Lindau 2017 is our primary case study. But games like Dear Esther from 2012 kind of popularized the subgenre of games without gameplay, in quotes, right? Which can be called all sorts of things: exploration games, narrative games, literary games, virtual experiences, or just walking simulators. And this is where you kind of point out walking simulators has sometimes been used to denigrate gameplay. It is really interesting how people are expecting certain forms of interactivity and gameplay mechanics, and when those are lacking and they're not the point, those gamers are like, oh well, this isn't a game then, or like they want to just like shove it off to the side instead of saying, well, maybe that's just not a game I want to play.
Right.
There's like a lot of territorial elements here.
Right. Yeah, in the car this morning when we were going to the river to do a float, we were talking about like, I almost never want to play a game to challenge myself. If I am playing a video game, I'm here to have a nice time.
Yeah, life is challenging enough sometimes.
Yeah. And some people think it's a nice time to challenge themselves. I'm like, great, play Bloodborne, play Elden Ring. I will never. Tried once, never again. It's not for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I agree that you can kind of like fit it to your moods, just like you might put on certain music for, the kind of vibe that you want to go for. It's nice that there's such a range of different experiences and gameplay styles, because like, platformers can be just as challenging, but it's different. It's a lot different than combat mechanics. I guess there's timing involved in both, but I don't feel it that way. When I play, it's very different. I don't get quite as stressed in a platformer as I do in like an Elden Ring type game. Not that I've played any of Elden Ring, but
I mean, I got pretty stressed playing like VVVVV.
Yeah, there are times where that's a little stressful. Yeah. That's true. There are some
mess up a jump and you're just like
jumps.
Yeeting across the entire screen.
Yeah, for me it's like Super Meat Boy does cause some stress. Or Cuphead. I'm still in awe, back to my book with Lisa. This kind of came out of that Cuphead work that she did all those years ago, and that's the chapter she's putting in the book, which I'm really excited about. Nice. And when she told me she beat the game to do this chapter, she's like, well, yeah, I figured. Yeah, I was like, how? I haven't beaten the game. I mean, that was her sole focus. She just like ground it in until she did it, and I'm still good. I'm always going to be impressed by that.
Yeah,
it's like never research. Say you're not a gamer if you friggin' beat Cuphead just to write a chapter on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I beat Cuphead.
Yeah, I certainly haven't. It causes everyone stress. It's great. Yeah. And Christopher Madigan's music is wonderful. It's so much fun to listen to. Of course, it's an artistic achievement with the graphics and everything too. I think it's just, I love games like that are just so stylized unto themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's some of my favorite stuff, and actually a lot of these games have that feel too. It's just not the same gameplay. So this is where Navigable narrative comes from, is just that sort of like sidestepping any possible negative connotations of walking simulator, although like you said, I feel like it's been reclaimed. Maybe that's just the people that the gamers that I know tend to be like very cool with a range of experiences.
Yeah.
And not getting all like, oh, only hardcore games count. So
right.
This is our definition here. So navigable narratives, soundscape spatialized in its three-dimensional space, downplaying or lacking traditional game elements of competition and reward, relying instead on the basic mechanics of movement, walking, running, swimming, flying, etc., and soundscape for player interactivity. 3, a narrative and soundscape whose pacing and tempo are inextricably linked. In short, the main purpose of navigable narratives is to partake in a story as the protagonist moving through a visually and sonically saturated 3D environment. Users engage in more paidic play. Wait, paidic?
Paidic.
It's paidic? Okay.
Because it's paideia? So
Paideia.
paidic. Paideia is the noun. Man, I only write it. I don't say
Yeah.
it. Who knows?
Yeah. It is what it is.
It is what
Paidic play. Paidic
it's,
play.
yeah, sandbox
Freeform
play.
sandbox play rather than ludic play, governed by rules and resulting in win-lose outcomes. And there's actually a lot of games that are described as like sandbox games that have a little bit more like ludic elements. So there, a lot of games blend these things too. Like
Yeah, the
like a
one that leaps to mind.
Minecraft is a good example of
Yeah,
that. Described as sandbox, but like there is regular gameplay in a Minecraft.
definitely. My mind immediately jumped to Goat Simulator.
Oh,
Like
love
you're
Goat
just mucking
Simulator.
around being a goat, but also you're like getting achievements. Like there's a list of things to do. Or Untitled Goose Game.
Yeah, that's a good
Like you
one.
can just follow your dreams and be a goose, but also there's a checklist of things to do.
Yeah. And then there's like the secret checklists that you
And
can
then secret
uncover and be
checklists.
like, cool, I found this neat thing that wasn't on the original checklist.
hmm
Love that. Yeah, love some Untitled Goose. It's almost
hmm
like I gave a paper on it once.
Yeah,
Really should like
so crazy.
upload that.
Yes. Oh my
Should
goodness.
do something with it. The only
You
fear.
submit that to JSMAG?
I guess I could write it up. Yeah, I have meant to come back to it, but that was kind of like a
I
thing
thought
I wasn't.
someone else did something with Untitled Goose Game in JSMAG or one of the
It
other.
was Dan Golding, the person
Yes,
who did the music.
obviously,
Yeah.
yes.
So maybe we don't need another one, but yeah, it was fantastic. And honestly, if I did anything with mine, I would probably draw heavily on that because
Fair.
it is literally the source. Yeah, it's good stuff. All right. Gotta find the button here to move. Yes, there. So this is what I call your thesis because it starts with I argue.
Yeah,
I argue that navigable narratives
signposting.
are a unique subgenre of video games with important artistic elements more akin to soundwalks and narrative delivery most similar to literary computer games. The relationship between navigable narratives and video games is the most commonly cited and recognized by critics and reviewers, but not often in a positive light. Navigable narratives / walking simulators are too commonly put down as failed video games for lacking expected ludic features. We must embrace navigable narratives for their paideia. I'm going to go with paideia rather than dismiss them for their absence of ludus. I love that. Navigable narratives can be more positively addressed by taking them on their own terms as a paidic genre of art, and as such they benefit from comparisons to other paidic genres like soundwalks and literary computer games. Drawing on these positive comparisons, I posit that understanding and analyzing navigable narratives calls for a toolkit of analytical methods and models pertinent to the three other genres noted here: video games, soundwalks, and literary computer games. I'm all about building a nice broad toolkit.
Yeah,
Love it. Love advocating for that.
yeah, and drawing from the interdisciplinarity because, as I said, it's really a three-way Venn diagram. So we need to take models and points of view from all three sides of analyzing those media.
I accidentally resized the window. Let me make it pretty again. Okay, that looks better. Okay.
Andrew, it's Greek to me. Yeah, that's true.
It's Greek to me. Ha
I
ha
never
ha
got a
ha.
handle on Greek,
Ha
to be honest.
ha ha. So, in this, you are aiming to explain, we today, the royal we, aim to explain the significance of the genre and the experience of these works. Pointing out that games like The Witness and Myst are sometimes classified as walking simulators, because they have that puzzle solving element, we are going to set those aside for now. They're great. Love The
Yeah,
Witness.
those are the two
Haven't
that come up
haven't
most in
beaten The Witness
questions.
yet. I got pretty far in it and then just like walked away from it. And need to like jump in. There's a bunch of those types of games. It's like I'll do in large plays and then
hmm
just kind of step away from and then get busy with other things. So a lot of those games I've never finished.
Fair.
Antichamber is another one that I'm like, how far did I
Yes.
actually get in that?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. I walked away from a walking simulator. Yeah, I did that intentionally. Thank you for picking up on it,
Ah,
Andrew. So we focus here on exploration and world building. So Firewatch got brought up like an interactive book. It's a bit more linear of a plot. So even within a navigable narrative, we can have more or less linearity. So Everybody's
Mhm.
Gone to the Rapture is less linear. There's no fixed direction to follow. You can miss stuff, you can trigger events in different orders, and not all of them are needed to progress the narrative, so you can miss things. But some of them
Mhm.
are a bit more. You sort of need to do things to kind of open up the next area, and
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a couple fixed plot points, but quite a lot of it is like probably 50% of the stuff is missable or
yeah.
out of order.
And I would say this is kind of a good place to differentiate like a visual novel too.
Hmm.
There's also generally going to be a lot less movement. There's a lot of like static screens. Maybe the characters are animating, but the idea of it being like very um, less linear, and you can like you go through these like dialogue trees to get your different endings.
Hmm.
So that there's definitely a comparison there, and I think the big difference being that it just doesn't have the the exploration in the space.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's kind of the reason I put as like my number one thing in the definition is that it has to have like the 3D space and spatialization of sound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I kind of do think a navigable narrative could be 2D as long as it has like really spatialized sound. Because again, like I just think it's really mostly about the exploration and the soundscape and moving through both quote unquote physical space and narrative space. And visual novels just don't have that part at all.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of my way of cleaving off visual novels like from this genre.
Yeah, I think that's a useful thing.
Yeah.
It's like yes, they are both very narratively focused, but they're
Hmm.
they're doing very different things.
Yeah. Yeah. One's a choose your own adventure, like a book, and the other is exploring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Leaving Lindau from 2017 by East Shade Studios. Is that so named because they also did East Shade?
Yeah. So leaving Lindo, yes, it turns out this was sort of a really, really fleshed out demo for Eastshade, is what it was. And they
Oh.
went ahead and put it out as a full game. So it's a prequel to Eastshade. You play as a character who in Eastshade has actually passed. You play like as that
Oh,
person's
I just
daughter
downloaded
in
East
Eastshade.
Shade because I saw that you had recommended it heavily on Steam, and so I got it in the
Yes.
Steam sale. I'm very excited for it.
Yes. Oh my God. Like Eastshade is definitely like that's an S tier game for me. Easily top 10 game. I've replayed it a couple times and like it's not necessarily different when you replay it, but it's just such a beautiful, lovely experience.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited
Like
for it.
yeah, 100% cozy game.
Yeah, yeah. I saw like you gave it a really glowing review on Steam, and it was pretty inexpensive on the Steam sale, so I was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna
Hmm.
buy this. So I haven't opened it yet, but soon.
Yeah.
And actually, it'll be a nice follow up, having just played through most of this, and
Hmm.
we'll see some of the sort of ending section of this today. So in this game, we're in a sort of fictional coastal town island where our protagonist Clara grew up, and she's been offered a research position on a boat on a ship that is going to be departing on an expedition. So she's going to be gone for maybe years, and she's still feeling a lot of pull and ties to the place where she grew up, and even some her uncle and some family members are kind of like, "Why do you need to leave? Like you have everything you need right here." And um, it's that you experience very much like, okay, I want to go and like make my own way in the world. I want to be independent. I want to explore, but also like I kind of don't want to leave either. Um,
Hmm.
and the game brings you up to the docks at the end where you're kind of making the final choice. Like, do I get on the boat? I guess I'm not there yet. So, so that is I get, and I would imagine there's two different endings then based on which you choose.
You'll see.
We'll see. We'll see what I how far I get. The areas aren't super long. We might even be able to play and maybe have chat vote on which one I go for, even though they will have missed all of the. You go around and you go to different areas that are meaningful, and you kind of recover memories, and you sort of
Never
experience
say
your ties to the place as you go. But
yeah, if you're at the docks, you're at the last area.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like that's how short of a of an experience it is,
it's only a few
which
hours. Yeah, And really the amount of time depends on like how you explore too. Like if you're kind of like
Right.
walking through every little thing.
You can speed run in 10 minutes if you want.
Oh, totally.
It
Yeah.
seems counter to the point, but
Speed running a
you
walking
can.
simulator,
Whee!
a running simulator. So our soundscape here employs a limited palette of sounds, birds, footsteps, and some musical. The music is pretty rich, though. Like reading this, I didn't expect the music to be quite so like emotional, and I don't know. Like there's some cello lines that are just like soaring out of the. I was like, wow, this is beautiful music.
Yeah.
But it's not like there's 80 tracks for the game.
Right.
It is a smaller experience, so it informs the participant about the area. It differentiates the areas both geographically and narratively. So the sound of waves may suggest the ocean nearby, even when it's not visible. The musical key, instrumentation, and melodic theme suggest the protagonist's mood and reinforce the other connotations suggested by the soundscape. So now we have our walkthrough statement. Here's where we go. To assess the navigable narratives, I propose an approach drawing on eco-musicology, sound studies, architecture, virtual reality, video game music theory, and narrative film theory. Always love a big toolkit here. Nice broad palette of colors.
Trying, yeah.
First, I draw on R. Murray Schafer's soundscape analysis, and then J. Douglas Porteous and Jane F. Maston's reply to Schafer to provide a way of mapping the sonic environment of virtual worlds. Second, I show how certain methods of video game music analysis are ideal for navigable narratives, especially EMG's examination of modular scores. Third, I explore virtual narrative time theory by Alison Warren to address the temporal aspect of sound in navigable narratives. Finally, I discuss sound artist Janet Cardiff's approach to the sound walk to inform an understanding of character embodiment and sound diegesis. Throughout, I apply these methods and paradigms to the navigable narrative, leaving Lindau to create a holistic analysis of the navigable narrative as a special subgenre of video game with the key traits founded in sound walks and literary computer games. Love a good, clear, here's what happens and in what order.
Would you like signposts? Here we go.
And those are hard statements to deploy well. That was a very elegant one. I think a lot of people often hate them because that they can be sort of hard to write.
But it was really hard to write.
Yeah.
I remember that took a lot of revision.
Yeah. I always struggle with that. And then I'm wanting to do it like while the chapter's still in progress, and I'm like, I really need to be writing this last, the way you would write an abstract last. But I don't know. It's hard for me to start in the middle and then not do the intro. Like, so I end up doing kind of a hybrid. It's a process. This game is Leaving Lindau, which we will be coming back to again and again because it is our central case study here to answer to the chat. So, Schafer on soundscapes. He's a Canadian ethnomusicologist, introduced the term in 5 Village Soundscapes in 1977, who went to 5 different villages that had populations of about 300 people, and then selected the most salient or meaningful pitches and rhythms in those 5 villages. And there was kind of a promoting this pastoral idea, right? It's 300 people is pretty small, so it's suggesting that like city noise is antithetical to human flourishing, versus like the idea that like even human-made sounds or mechanical sounds in these small places are somehow in like a natural harmony with each other, like actually tunable. Like you can measure them and go, oh, this is a chord, which we'll see.
Like
it's
this
fun.
Is B flat major 7.
Yeah. So he uses a variety of charts to track melody, harmony, rhythm, and the beautiful hand-drawn maps of the spatial area. There's tables indicating all of the different sound sources one might hear, including whether they're continuous or intermittent, and hand-drawn maps to show location of the sound sources, and then sounds are also notated on a musical staff. So what does that look like? So, for example, Scroove, I have no idea if I'm saying that right.
Neither.
He described as a dominant ninth chord, quite in tune. I love the quite in tune. That's so cute.
Quite in tune.
This is quoted on page 24.
You just stand there and you're like, oh, that's in tune. Look at that.
Yeah, suggesting the soundscape had a natural harmony emanating from it. So again, this kind of like ideal. But note where the sources are coming from. So we have our G sharp from the cardboard factory, not faculty. Cardboard faculty.
Cardboard faculty.
People show up to take classes. Nothing happens because it's just cardboard
Amazing.
faculty. The metalworks contributes our D sharp. The train whistle our F sharp. The shopping plaza refrigeration unit is an A sharp. And then the East Side Brewery is our B sharp. So we get this dominant ninth chord, and it's surprisingly in tune.
Quite in tune.
Quite in tune.
Quite in tune.
And then
brought this prop for a reason.
Exactly. And then on the right side we have, I love how cute this map is.
Right.
And you can see it's like obviously a drawing of the area. It labels birds, birds, birds. Like it shows you what's happening where all the different sound sources are, labeling things on the map, of course. So we like the church is here, but then there's like info about the bells and things like that. So this isn't Scroove. This is Bissingen.
Yeah, he didn't have a diagram I liked of screws. He had this whole
Mm-hmm.
thing, and I liked his chord, but he didn't have the diagram. But I liked his picture of Bissingen, so that's what I
Yeah.
mix and matched a little.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think it gives you
yeah,
a sense of, his whole process to get a little
yeah.
bit of both.
Also, like sidebar, I think this would be a fantastic exercise for like a sound designer in a video game. Like this is how you make a soundscape. Just
Mm-hmm.
here's where birds are emanating. Here's where these other sounds are emanating. And of course, like you do that in Unity or in your game engine. But like I think it'd be fun to just hand draw it. Just
Yeah.
do something like this.
So, switching over to video games from here, you're pointing out that game designers don't have unlimited sounds that they're putting into these games. So they're often going to focus on the most important environmental sounds. And so the result is, each sound chosen is steeped with semiotic meaning. It's important. And the choice of the sounds avoids overwhelming both the hardware, the host hardware, and the participant, because things are going to work a little different in a game than in the real world. If you have too much sound happening, you might not be able to like really parse any of it in a meaningful way, and you're going to run into some technical limitations. So we don't have unlimited sound. So then that means that the sounds themselves become ear cons, like an icon, but auditory. So little short musical messages where pitch and timbre communicate to players. And some soundscapes in the more linear narratives are going to be almost like a through composed work. So instead of having repetition in form, you're going to sort of experience things in a linear fashion. And although there might be repetition of the individual sounds within that, we'll see how that gets layered up in this game later on. Also, some are going to feature more indoor sounds, some are going to feature more outdoor elements, which is useful here because Leaving Lindau is a great case study because it has a little bit of everything that we're talking about here. So the mother's house and tea house areas are purely indoors. The forest is purely outdoors. The uncle's garden and the docks combine indoor and outdoor elements, and it's nonlinear up till the docks, which are always last. So you start in the mother's house, but then the other three areas you get to choose the order in which you do them.
Mm-hmm.
So a few salient sounds are shared among the areas, though each area also has a unique set of sound types and volume, as well as one sound exclusive to the area, which is summarized here in Table 1. You like how I just scanned all of your images?
Perfect.
Stuck them in.
Get that screen snip.
Yeah, get that screen snip. Exactly. So here you can see the different areas, and then the different birds, whether waves are present, speech sounds, wind, and then which sound is exclusive to each area. Yeah. So we have a vibraphone sound in the forest, which you can play. It's a little ear training thing. It's like, can I remember this melody that my dad taught me? It's awesome. It's one of my favorite moments.
Cute.
And of course, I nailed it on the first try because I was very good at ear training. It's really fun.
Like you have to get a feel for the instrument. Like what note is this, and then what note is that? Okay. So if that's that, okay, then that.
Yeah, it was good times. I think I did like a scale, and then it prompted me like, I wonder if I can do that melody, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Creaking floorboards in the mother's house, clinking glasses in the tea house. I kept just ordering different teas because the teas put a color filter over everything. And then the woman kept being like, I think you've had enough.
Cutting you off?
She was mad at me because I just kept ordering tea.
No more Darjeeling.
That feels a little bit like my real life, so accurate
one nice thing.
reflection.
Yeah. In each shade, the T's actually give you like different abilities. Um,
Exciting.
yeah, so it's not just a color, like it does put a different color over the world, but then like you can see things that would have otherwise been invisible, or you can
Oh, I love that.
uh
I can't
yeah,
wait.
I'll let you find out. But yeah,
That's
it is a cute thing they do with the
that's
T's.
going to be something I start pretty imminently here. As soon as our book is sent off to Karen, I'll probably start playing that a little bit. Brought to you by the letter D. We have a tonal center of D for pretty much the entire game. So
Mhm.
much of the non-diegetic music is in D minor or in parallel or related minor keys. There's a pretty limited pitch collection, which you suggest kind of reflects that as exploratory as this is, each area is bounded. So there is only a set amount of space to explore. And then this is the part where I'm like, I don't know what Spear is. You ran all the sound through a spectrogram analysis in Spear, even all of the non-musical sounds, and found that it fell into a detonality. So maybe just like briefly, what's Spear for those of us that don't know it?
It's just a program. So it's a software, and it just it does spectral analysis. And you can do, there's a couple different settings you can put it on, but I really like just put in your sound file, and it'll just be, it'll say like here's the bass tone, and then here's your spectra above it, so you can kind of figure out how many harmonics does it have? Is it like a pure sine tone? Is it more like a clarinet? Is it more like a flute? Like more, which yeah, so get all the spectra, and then you can also edit them. You can cut some out, so if you want to make it more like a clarinet, which only has the odd harmonics, you can just take out the even ones.
Mm,
um, so you can do a little bit of editing.
that's fun.
I personally just like, yeah, so Spear is free and open source is the other reason kind of why I use it. And I know like there's maybe better paid ones, but I'm like, Spear works great, especially if I'm just doing the type of spectrogram analysis I'm doing, where I just want to make sure like, hey, this wind, like, what's the bass tone of it? It's a
Yeah,
D. Okay, thank you.
kind of like averaging. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that's what it is.
And there is some variation. You note that the birds caw between the F sharp six and the F6, which makes the tonality ambiguous because that's the third of our chord. So
Mm-hmm.
that's floating between major and minor,
Yeah,
which has an interesting kind of bittersweet quality, I think, in a game that is all about like, do I stay or do I go?
exactly.
And the memories that get drudged up going around trying to say your goodbyes, pack, get ready to leave.
Yeah. And
So
I love like it's so subtle because you hear the birds and you're like, yeah, of course, a seagull cawing, like a like it just drops a little.
mm,
And then running it through Spear, I did not realize until I did that. I was like, that is an F sharp to an F. Like it is on that third. It's doing that major minor. And that's like,
it's so
yeah,
cool.
imbuing this whole soundscape with this major minor dichotomy.
That is just the coolest. And of course, speaking voices, we don't hear as pitched, but everyone who's used autotune knows you can just, put vocoders and different things on your voice and turn them into, or kind of uncover the underlying pitch, I guess is the way to put that. Um, they do fall into the soundscape without semantic content because there aren't people talk. Wait, do they talk to you? I'm trying to remember. I think the uncle
They
does,
kind of do, and the mom does,
and
but
the
they
mom
say
does.
like the mom's line, she just says like "Estambia" or
Oh,
something
that's
like
right.
that,
Yeah,
and
it's
you're
like
like, that's
not
not words.
it's not really in language. It's yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of like Simlish or something, or like whatever the
yeah.
language they speak here in Lindau.
Hmm.
I was trying to remember because I remember the subtitles and what was said, and I'm like, wait, did they actually act that out? They don't.
They don't say
um,
it.
so the
I
voices all
don't think it's
move
a
naturally
duplication.
like speech, but they begin and end on pitches that match the musical key, which is also so cool.
Yup. That was
Everything is
obviously
very
this is
unified.
all on purpose. Like Phoenix Glendinning knew what was up.
Yeah, it's almost like this was designed with a
What?
lot of intention.
Soundscape design? What?
So we're quite in tune here too. I love the callback to the Schaefer. Taking
Yep.
into account the musical keys, the natural soundscape, and human speech, I determine Lindau's soundscape to be a quite in tune D minor 7 chord, to paraphrase Schaefer. So here it is, notated. So the crashing waves are barely pitched, but
Mhm.
identifiable in spectrum analysis. So I'm guessing that's a range here being depicted at the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like F to like a C ish,
Yeah, it's really broad.
but
It is
mostly
hard to say like
hovering.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, it's hard to say that's a specific note. But Yeah.
Yeah. And then speech of the men is G or A and a G because you have two chords here. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So the two chords are kind of like if things change,
Oh,
like
I
that
see. The first one's
range.
Mother's House, the final, and then the second one is the Docks, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we have D tonic set by the music and wind. We have speech of women and children sitting in an A, and then the seagulls who are giving us our ambiguous tonality by floating between the F sharp and the F natural. So cool. So then we get to Schaefer. Man cannot live on Schaefer alone.
No, no, no.
So we get to critiques, but really more like expansions of Schaefer, and like here's more that we can do that kind of go at this idea. So Porteous and Maston's 1985 article Soundscape. One of the points that I didn't really get into in the summary here is that Schaefer had measured sound pressure levels at certain distances between the icons and the ircons. And so it was a way of measuring the quality of the loudness. With sound pressure, what would that give you? Would that give you how loud sounds were? Would that give you
Yeah.
density?
Basically loudness.
Loudness.
And so then you could also kind of calculate, so if, this refrigeration unit on the square is this far away from the cardboard factory, but they have like this loudness and so the sound pressure, at what point, like, where would you stand to find out that they're equal?
Oh
Where
yeah.
would you stand? Like one is the more dominant sound than the other.
So you can kind of establish the map that way by measuring the sound in different areas.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
so
that relates to how like video game sound designers kind of figure out, like in Unity or whatever, like this is emanating a sound and it should go like this
it
far.
goes
Like it
this
should
far
go
and then it
this far away.
transitions, or you don't hear it, or
Yeah.
something else takes over. Yeah. So that's useful. But basically, the Porteous and Maston add. They decided that a more objective way is to very evenly analyze soundscape, and then they base everything on these hexagons of about 50 feet, which is the sort of average human earshot.
Mhm.
And so it's just another way to create a soundscape map.
Yeah. I like how kind of even that is. So like you
Yeah.
stand in the middle of one hexagon and you're like, okay, I'm getting a lot of like this hum, I'm getting a little bit of this buzz, and I'm getting a tiny bit of traffic noise. And then you go to sort of like the next like uh discrete earshot space, and then like, oh, I'm getting a lot of traffic noise, I barely hear that buzz and I barely hear that hum, like so getting it more that way instead of the discrete like circles that would overlap. So
Yeah.
hexagon by hexagon, how do we kind of divvy this up?
Yeah. For our purposes, though, video games don't always hold to the 50 feet rule.
Hmm.
But they often adapt to this method. So you can move the avatar regular distances and then analyze the sound pressure level in Spear. Um, so using this method on 4 different games, you determined the earshot lifeless planet. You were exploring a planet. And so the virtual earshot is 200 plus feet. I'm guessing that's mostly like entirely outside, right?
Yeah, it's entirely outside. So you're either in big flat open space or like there's bits with sort of canyons. Um, but like there's a couple spots where there's something like on the horizon you're supposed to be aware of, and so I think they made it 200 feet just so it helps it feel even more expansive, and then it helps draw attention to like things far away on the horizon. Because a 50-foot thing wouldn't have made sense. You see a thing, but you're like, well, I don't hear anything, so it's like whatever. I'm gonna go over here now. But if they kind of boost that range so that you can hear so much farther, I think that's why they did it with Lifeless Planet.
Yeah. Whereas Nefis
Sure.
from 2017, set in a small glade, not glad. Whoops.
It's a glad glade.
So it's a glade, yeah. And so the earshot's smaller because it's a smaller space that we're exploring. So it's about 20 feet. Duress there from 2012, the closest to the 50-foot earshot.
Mhm.
And then leaving Lindau, it varied based on whether we were indoor or outdoor, which I think makes
Yeah.
sense. Outdoor was about 40, indoor was about 15 to 20, and then the avatar's direction affects volume balance.
Yeah. So it's spatialized.
It's spatialized, which is cool. Cool stuff. And how did you determine, like, was it like per step? Like, how did you determine that it was 50 feet or something?
I sort of triangulated. I am a 5'6" person, so I was like, I am going to assume these avatars are all 5'6",
May as well.
and go off
You're
of
the one
that.
playing.
It's me. And like so I could have been wrong. Like maybe whoever designed the avatars you play as, like maybe they're 6 foot, like maybe they're 6'6", maybe they're 5 foot, like who knows. Um so I went with 5'6". I figured that's a good average height. And so I had to do math, which was hard. But I was like, okay, I'm 5'6". Especially so in leaving Lindo, like with the other people, I'm like, I will assume all these avatars are the same height.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna assume we're all 5'6". And so, yeah, a lot of screenshots, a lot of just triangulation. Okay, so that's about that far. And then so I had to just like walk a few steps, spin around, try to like literally triangulate, like, okay, this looks about right. And I did a bunch of really crappy hand-drawn maps I will never publish in any paper, and no one is allowed to see them, but they worked for me to
Hey,
take
they were
notes.
useful.
Yeah.
They served their purpose. Yeah, I think that's so cool.
Yeah. There might have been like and even I'm sure there's a better, more objective way to do it, but yeah, I just did my best like triangulating within the space and crummy hand-drawn maps.
And I think in this point, the overall point stands even if it's a little
Yeah.
bit different. The idea being that like different games, depending on the amount of space they want you to explore, they might kind of shrink that earshot range
Yeah.
to make it a little more intimate, which makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, indoor versus outdoor. I think it really made sense the way they did it.
Yeah. So this is your top-down perspective of the mother's house,
Hmm.
which you did in RPG Maker, which I
I
love.
did.
I see you playing that sometimes, and I'm always like, oh, "What are you doing? What are you making?"
I'm making a video game.
Yeah, I'm excited. So this is just a way of having a top-down view. So the overlapping lines indicate shift in vertical space, either descending the flight of stairs or stepping into the sunken living room. So yeah, you start up in your bedroom and you're like packing up, and then you can go down and see everyone. And so there's different things that you can hear depending on where you are. So here's the hexagons overlaid, and as you were in different areas, you can hear music in certain spots. You can hear the mother cooking sounds, um, footsteps. So different elements appear depending on where you are.
Hmm.
Very
And of
cool.
course, like, yeah, an even more objective map. Like if I could show direction, like if you're facing mother, she's this loud, versus if
Right.
you're back to mother, she's this loud. Um, but going with the porches and Maston, just like the really salient, within this hexagon, here's what's within earshot. And I could like, specify like this is very loud, this is softer,
Right.
but just kind of
Depends what
salient
you need it
cues.
for. I always
Yeah.
say, like with transcriptions, the form of my transcription depends on what I need to do with the transcription.
Right.
So
Yeah, definitely.
I had an example in my dissertation. It was the only landscape page in the whole dissertation because it was a single measure that I plotted. Like it was basically a glissando in Dr. Mario, but I plotted here's every single thing, and I had
Nice.
I don't remember what the rhythmicization of it was. It was the quantizing of the note. It was ridiculous, whatever I came up with. But
Amazing.
that was such a But I was basically showing. I kind of made that point at one moment where I was like, okay, there are limits to what transcription can do, and if I'm doing this for a purely like music audience, I can just do, hey, here's a glissando. But hey, if we open it up in like a tracker program, you can see
Mhm.
every frame.
Yep.
And and so there might be a reason that we want to look at that. And
Yeah.
so then I had my silly measure versus like the normal looking one. So yeah,
Outstanding.
things like this are the same way. Like you're just trying to show what the sound sources are and where they
Hmm.
happen. But if you're trying to look at the relationships between them, then you might zoom in on one of them and then explain what's happening in each section.
Exactly.
Kind of depends what you need. But your whole point here is just like illustrating all the different things in your toolkit that we
Hmm.
can apply to a lot of other games, which is great.
Yeah, just figuring out how to apply these toolkits. So from like a soundscape um, article that was made by architects, like that's their background is architecture. Figuring out how to apply that to a video game space, to virtual space.
Yeah. So then we get to modules and themes. So this is Elizabeth Medina Gray's work. And Elizabeth has work on this in the dissertation, but then also the Zelda Wind Waker chapter
Mm-hmm.
is one that a lot of people draw on as well, to basically talk about spatialized audio and sort of how different elements of our score and soundscape are interacting with each other. So in this case, our modular stems contain themes, motifs, sound effects, all these different things. And they can create or reflect certain narrative elements ranging from setting to plot twists. And when they divide, transition, or overlap, they create a theme. And then you can analyze how those things interact. So I think a good example is like when you are in an open world game and you're entering a new area where there is like a musical theme associated with that area, and it starts to kind of like fade in, but then if you walk backward, it kind of fades back out again. And so you can find that boundary point. And if you're really into this stuff, you can play with that, right? You can kind of run back and forth, or like, oh, there's an enemy approaching in this area. So like the tense music starts and I can kind of run around and hear it get louder or more active. So that's a really good way to sort of note how does that tension theme relate to the more calm exploration open world map theme. And you can note that meter and timbre can be connected to each other. So the theme itself can be smooth, disjunct, or a combination is really the important thing here. So as you hit those transition points, you can have it be like where you almost don't notice it transitioning. It's just like so smooth. It can be disjunct where it is like, hello, we're getting your attention. Something's changed here. Or we can have a combo. So it might be, it's in the same meter and like rhythmically everything's kind of like fitting together, but the timbre might be suddenly very different, and that could also draw your attention. So we can have different elements that don't line up too, which is a really useful way to think about spatialized audio. Sounds triggered by the player, the direction the avatar is facing, the in-game timer, all of these things can create sounds in the game. And another term that you'll encounter a lot in the literature is the idea of loops versus stingers. So loops are going to be repeated phrases or sound objects. They're more continuous. They're kind of seen as more foundational elements of the soundscape, versus stingers that are, they sting you. They're meant to get your attention. So they're phrases or sound objects. Yeah. The sting, the bee sting. The phrases or sound objects that are not repeated and can direct player attention and movement, carry the narrative info. They're also very directional. And what's interesting for our purposes, we kind of made this comment earlier, is that we have these kind of nested layering loops. So the player is going to experience that as a non-repeating soundscape, even though it actually has a lot of elements. They're just repeating, not together.
Yeah, they're repeating like their repeats are disjuncted, so it takes a long time for like the whole situation to make a full loop.
Yeah. So you might have, again, the bird call, which is like, not even a second, right? Or a second, very short, versus like you could have a longer sample of like wave sounds that eventually repeats, but you're just capturing a bunch of waves. And that's like 8 times as long, and then you have something else that sits in the middle. Did I actually save? You had a drawing of this somewhere.
On the next slide, maybe?
Maybe.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
I must not have thrown it in there.
That's
But, showing all of these. So they nest within each other, and that's a really useful way to sort of save space too, because if you're just trying to capture some of these like sleep apps that have like listen to a rainstorm, listen to airplane noise, they have to get such like long continuous footage, or they have to use this type of technique.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure some of them do, but some of those apps where people just like submit their own recordings, if they don't have like many minutes of footage, you're gonna hear that loop point, and you have to kind of figure out ways to smooth that out, and that can be a problem where somebody's like, oh, I started noticing where the seam was on the, I used to
Right.
use whatever the train sound to fall asleep to, and then I started hearing the loop point, and it
Yeah.
ruined it.
Oh no.
So having stuff nested like this is a good way to avoid it, because even though there's like internal repetitions of the different sound sources, they're kind of
Hmm.
covering each other up, so you're not like noticing that seam as much.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's pretty common, I think, in a lot of video games. And also, like, I sort of realized later, so after this was published, I wish I had this wonderful thought earlier. It's sort of uh like Philip Glass minimalism.
Yeah.
Like, Satyagraha never actually repeats, but
Speaking
everything
my
like
language.
it's all loops and layers. So
Yeah.
yeah, so like that's like another genre that navigable narratives. I mean, and video games broadly, certainly borrows that technique of like, how do we get so much sound material with so little sound material?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it's like you read my mind. I started it out. My dissertation was originally going to be on Satyagraha,
Yeah,
so
I remember.
specifically, and it was exactly the connection you're describing, that minimalism to video games was such a natural jump for me, because I
Mhm.
was interested in, again, how do you get so much out of a relatively small number of materials. We are just like, obviously everybody has to make a delimitation or you don't have form at all. So
Mhm.
but these folks are even using a smaller toolkit, and they're directing our attention in all these powerful ways, and it really adds up to so much more than the sum of its parts. So,
Definitely.
hearts.
Yeah.
Satyagraha, I saw it live when the Met did it.
Nice.
Whatever the most, gosh, was that, like 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there. Um,
Nice.
they did that. Do they still do the thing where you can go to the movie theater and like watch, like you're going to the opera but you're not in New York?
Oh,
It's
yeah,
basically
yeah,
like
for sure. Yeah,
like you're watching a Twitch stream or something. But
yeah.
you go to the movie theater, so you're getting that like theatrical experience. I did a bunch of those when I was just starting at OSU, and so they did a ring cycle broken up a little bit. So I remember seeing like Siegfried and everything. I think I did we see all four, maybe, but Satyagraha was one of them, and it really affected me. I cried quite a bit in the
Nice.
final
That's
scene.
awesome.
The way they staged it and everything, it was beautiful. And so I was convinced that was going to be my dissertation, and then it wasn't. A lot
That's
of
fair.
things were going to be my dissertation and then weren't.
Same.
I love hearing about it, how everyone like winds through that. Because it's like, yeah, I went from Satyagraha to Carlo Gesualdo to video
Nice.
games. Like, what?
Yeah, that all makes
And
sense.
there's a thread, but it's a very
So,
idiosyncratic thread to
yeah.
me.
I
So,
know. I was gonna do Andrzej Panufnik,
oh,
uh, and then I was going to do Priscilla McLean, and then I was like, we're just gonna do electronic music overall, MIDI scores, doing it.
yeah.
Oh, of course, there was a time I wondered if I could possibly figure out a way to do a dissertation on Equiton, the notation system. I think that lasted about one meeting with my advisor, and we were both just like, nah.
Good advisor is worth their
Yeah.
weight in gold. And
Yes. Yes.
mine was always encouraging all of my, like I think a lot of people have that kind of like, they love both early music and like later 20th century music. That
Hmm.
seems like an interesting pairing, where I've met a lot of like medieval, like Karen, medievalist, who also does
Yeah.
game music. And um, not that there aren't folks that work in other eras, but I don't know. There's just something about those two things that are really appealing. And so, and I came out of a very early music focused undergrad program. A lot of the
Nice.
musicologists were early music people. Yeah, Karen waves. uh, so I think I was inclined toward that. My undergraduate thesis was on Josquin. So
Nice. Yeah, mine's on Debussy.
nice, nice. So you should have written the Goose Game paper, is what you're saying.
Nah.
Nah. Yeah.
This is
So
better.
we wind through. We take all these courses. We get exposed to different areas, and even ending up in the disability side of things was that kind of like realization that what I was actually interested in and what ties everybody together is the concept of limitation, and limitation not as a negative, but as like limitation itself being where the affordance comes from, and being able to look at that, social limitation happening because of disability, which can be extremely negative. Again, you can also have that very affordance based celebration, like affirmational disability theory as well. It doesn't have to be either or, but that, games also have this element. Minimalism has this element. And actually, my approach to Jess Waldo was going to be looking at and I think I will probably do an article at some point outside of video game music. I was going to be looking at the historiography, and sort of the casual ableism of a lot of the historiography, saying like, oh, because he murdered his wife, therefore he was, he had XYZ. People posthumously diagnosing him with all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And then looking at sort of how that has influenced the discussion of the music, and some of the chromaticism being not really, just written off as madrigalism and things like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
I have ideas on
Yeah.
Jess Waldo. It didn't
Yeah.
work out, but I will get
Oh,
there at
that's
some
really
point.
interesting, though.
And actually, I have my medievalist professor was like, every time he sees me, he's like, "You gonna publish that Jess Waldo stuff?" I'm like, I don't know. I should.
Yeah. To continue the sidebar, just for like one more little thing. I did a seminar paper on Schoenberg, and I mean, kind of, sort of like a premise of it was because of his like disastrous breakup with his first wife, like he literally caught her in bed with her lover. Like, that like obviously devastated him, and thus he invented atonality, and music's never been the same. So I kind of had that premise, like, sorry, for better for worse. Um, that was a premise that like was in there. So, but yeah,
Absolutely.
can't make these
Also,
the same.
I love the academic pipe.
I'm so happy I have this now. I
It
made it
just
at work yesterday, and I was like, I need it right now.
You need the elbow patch blazer to go with it.
I have this, but I don't have patches on it yet. Yet.
Get there.
Working on it.
And then we'll do a stream on the sequel to this from the
Perfect.
Oxford. And then we'll just like keep at it, more and more like Sherlock Holmes elements will just creep into the ensemble.
I'll get a mustache and a monocle next.
Yeah, exactly. Monocle, maybe a trench coat, maybe one of those hats. It'll be like very gradual over the course of all the streams, and then if you watch them together, you're like, oh, there's a transition here. There's a progression into Sherlock Holmes.
Perfect. Yes, for my next paper, it will not be a paper; it'll be an experience, and it's an escape room. And
honestly, I would love that, and that would be a pretty neat like way of fleshing out some of this kind of work too, because it would all be about your soundscape design and like, yeah. Anyway, you should. I can't wait for whatever it is you tinker with in RPG Maker. I want to play it.
if we have time at the end, I'll talk about it a little.
Nice. All right, so narrative theory in time. You mentioned Janet Murray and others on how players influence order and pacing of a story. And here we know that nonlinearity is a big part of video games in general, but particularly games like this where we might have alternate endings, optional things, missable things. And so and this is also true in visual novels, a lot of the point of it is that you will play it over again. So you won't just do the one experience and be done. You might say, okay, well, what if I had decided to pursue a relationship with this other character in the case of like a dating sim type thing.
I've gotten all the achievements in Dream Daddy Dating Simulator.
Excellent. I was gonna say Hotful Boyfriend. Some of those. Nonlinearity affects the player's experience of those sonic themes, spatial delineations, and narrative pacing. So this could be a problem in the analysis because we often like to have fixed things. So the order of events matters in these games, but not the seconds and minutes between, you say, which I love. But looking at the form itself can be interesting. It's useful to look at the structure as well as the transitions, but it's just important to recognize how a different player is going to have a different experience. And so that becomes a question of, okay, do I look at a bunch of different gameplay footage? Do I pull a bunch of long plays on YouTube as well as my own, or do I just sort of recognize this was how I played the game and therefore that's going to reveal certain things to me?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just useful to think about. They
Yeah.
could just serendipitously reach a really cool musical transition, where there's like a rising musical intensity, and right as they approach the thing, somebody that's taking their sweet old time, like me, getting around, might hear some kind of conclusive cadence serendipitously. They might not. So it's
Mm-hmm.
good to be aware these things are not monoliths, and that's kind of the
It's
point.
true. Yeah.
Because otherwise
Because
they
I
would
mean,
just be novels, right? they, they
right.
they would be the same fixed order.
And I think with anything musical, you have this to a degree because if you think about if you listen to different recordings of the same piece, depending on like the tempo it's been taken at, depending on how the musician, really, like works with that phrase and like, makes a crescendo or makes have a ritardando,
Mm-hmm.
just these different little stylized effects, even though it's the same piece of music, like technically it's fixed, it has a score.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the different recording can make you have a different analysis or a different reaction to it.
Yeah, you hear.
So if we,
How many times do you hear someone say, "Oh, I heard different things when I went
yeah,
to hear so and so do Beethoven for the 8 millionth time"? Like,
exactly,
I saw them do Beethoven 7, and I heard something new this time that I had never picked up on before.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
So
it's that problem, but yeah, on steroids because
yeah,
like truly different musical moments come in at different musical moments and the seams get really interesting. And of course, this is every video game analysis. Every Ludomusicologist on this stream is like, uh-huh. And it's the same for Navigable.
100%. So then we get into sound walks as kind of a way of thinking through this idea of the player being in the driver's seat here. Hildegard Westerkamp coined the term in 1974 for an excursion built around listening to the environment. And this can be spontaneous, I'm just going out for a sound walk, or it can be something that's curated, where you're actually kind of getting like a guided tour to something. And sometimes these are actually built as, pieces that you sit down and listen to, right? So
Hmm.
you are, and so things might be sort of put together in different ways, and maybe we're highlighting a certain sound source and drawing your attention to it by making it a little louder in the mix, so that there can be some post recording manipulation too. It's not always just I went out and recorded the space.
Great.
So they can be quite curated, which is relevant to video games. So instead of a sound walk with you can even have narrators. They're telling you like what kind of birds you're hearing and things like that. Instead of having that narrator, we have diegetic ear cons and auditory icons, the symbolic and iconic sounds that can guide us, advocate movement, and direct our attention. Long quote here, which I like.
Woo.
Quote, navigable narratives provide something unique that soundwalk composers might envy: time and space for the user to engage fully with the soundscape and perform deep listening without getting ushered along before they have explored the sound to their personal satisfaction. For the participant, consciously or not, they have the luxury of taking in and interpreting the full soundscape. For an analyst, this reinforces the power of the soundscape that navigable narratives possess. It can also support the claim that the participant is relying on the soundscape to understand their environment and appreciate the story more than in traditional video games. End quote. So good. And I'm thinking about this a lot. I just finished a chapter on Dragon's Lair for my book. Lisa's
Cool,
writing
cool,
on Cuphead. I'm writing on Dragon's Lair. They're kind of two sides of
cool,
the same
cool.
coin in that sense. And a lot of the critical reaction to Dragon's Lair, for anyone who played it or hasn't played it, it was kind of fully animated. It was cell animation that they stored on Laserdisc, and you'd go play it in the arcade. And a lot of it is just what we would describe now as like quick time events. So you have to like make
Hmm.
the right choice, and then it pulls the next section of animation. Either you move on to the next room, there's a little fanfare, or you see one of the 109 different death sequences
All right.
A lot of them are just like mirror image, and there's a lot of reuse, but there's 109 different deaths you can experience, and man, will you experience them because the timing windows
Ooh,
are so tight. But
amazing.
MJ Clark, like as I was finishing this chapter, a book came out on the game, and I was like, frig, I had to read the whole book. It
Have
was
to.
just
Yeah.
it wasn't that I was mad that a book came out. It was just the timing of it. I was like, man, I was
Yeah.
almost done with this, and now
Yeah.
I ended up using it a lot because it was useful. It didn't talk about music at all though, which was interesting. But Clark had a whole chapter on sort of the like supposed failure of interactivity of that game, and points out that a lot of actually Myst got brought up as an example. A game like Myst, where there's this like gorgeously rendered environment,
Hmm.
encourages exploration and for you to like walk around and like interact with it and like sort of get a sense of your space and then even use that for puzzle solving.
Hmm.
Here everything it points out that like the visuals actually kind of imply that it's going to be more exploration based than it is, and then it ultimately, just based on the mechanics they were using, the actual deployment, it's more of like an action game, and it's much more timing and reflexes, and that he thinks actually a lot of people saying like the game was a failure of interactivity is because there's a disjunct there, that
Hmm.
the the beautifully hand painted backdrops you like want to sit there and explore, but you don't have time.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Which I think is a really interesting way of thinking about the interactivity. That it's not that it's not interactive; it's that the way that we have enshrined like what is interactive in games,
Yeah.
is not conducive to what that game was offering. So yes, it's interactive, but um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's just like it's dissonant with modern notions of interactivity. Anyway,
Right.
kind of something that came up as I was finishing that chapter and reading this, and this idea of giving the user time versus not giving the user time to really explore all that's been created. And that's what's
Hmm.
special about these games.
Yeah.
So we will. I wanted to get through the entire conclusion first, and then we're actually going to go into the game and do the
Yay.
docs.
Ducks.
So our conclusion is basically, hey, have a good toolkit of lots of different things. Like, be versatile. We can
Hmm.
combine all these methodologies to analyze these games. It's important to recognize where analysis is imperfect and incomplete, and where experiences can vary based on the style of play. But that just kind of opens up more avenues, which is actually it's an opportunity. It's exciting. Um, but it also may be a little bit humbling to just be like, listen, I'm not the only way of hearing this game. My particular experience is not going to be your experience, and that's
Right.
fine.
Yeah,
And look
you
at
are
how many
very
different
literally
things we
not.
can use to look at this.
Yeah.
So you say, I propose we may borrow an analytical lens from Soundwalks to study navigable narratives in an embodied genre with a modular and flexible narrative and a rich soundscape through which the participant moves in their own, if guided way. And there it is. Wah!
Ah,
Now
my first
let's
article.
switch. It's so good. I love this. Let me switch you over.
I hear, but I don't see it yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
switch, and then let me switch the stream. Video game. Haha. It's a very wide window. It's
Wow. Yeah.
not super resizable, so it is what it is. But hopefully we can hear some seagulls.
I just want to sit on the seagulls for a bit.
Yeah, what a debut. Exactly. What a debut article. It's so useful. It's so smart how it's triangulating so many different things, but it deploys all of them well. It's an achievement, and I love it.
Doing my best.
All right, so I've played through most of this game specifically to hang out at the docks. You thought that was outside. Okay, here we
Look how
are.
pretty. Oh, take screenshots on every frame. Oh, so pretty.
Yeah. Ooh, sorry. Hello, mouse.
Whee!
I won't even talk too much. Let's just like listen for a bit and then. There's a wall here.
the invisible walls do kind of bug me in this game and East Shade. But I
No, I
just
want to go back in the forest.
let me back. Let me in. Let me in. I do have the personal strong opinion that we should have fewer invisible walls. I don't think it's that hard to put up a fence, like especially in this particular instance. Like put a fence. Tell me I can't go there, but that's my opinion.
Period. It's like, I really want to go into construction. I know it's not safe. I don't care. I'm
Yeah,
going
you don't
up.
have a hard hat. You probably have open-toed shoes. Come on, Dana.
I just like want to walk on the beams.
But that's the thing. So with these like beautiful visuals, you're like, I want to go in this gazebo thing under construction. I want to walk on the beams. And then the game designers are like, no.
Okay, so just to kind of point this out, the waves were more salient when I turned to them versus kind of more of the it's still there, but I'm picking up more bird sound over here. And this really gorgeous track.
Oh, nice transition. Get like the waves come in a little bit. Yeah, a lot of processing power is going into this. Yeah. And though construction has come a long way in the last few weeks.
Cool.
Building.
It's not really recovering, it's just starting over in a different place. Our stinky old town was over that hill.
Yeah. Now it's in the river. Yeah, in East Shade. So you come back here, and they've like finished rebuilding. It's years later, and you can go to see like what happened with the mudslide that took care of the town. And there's just like only the tops of buildings sticking out, and they're like, no, they made it so tantalizing.
Hi, friends. I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna get on the boat. You're not helping. You can hear the
All those
footsteps.
sidewalks.
Oh wait.
Yeah, the footsteps in
Okay,
this.
so footsteps in the dirt. Crunch, crunch versus wood. Nice.
Pistombaya.
That sounds like me. Drawing, playing with your toys, listening to stories.
Mm-hmm.
Please later everything finished. All of life is exciting for you. Every speck of dirt and puddle of water was like a universe filled with unexplored wonders. That was when I knew there was no way you were going to be able to stay home and resist the mysteries of the world. Maybe I will, though.
You
How
don't know.
excited I am for you. Aw. You'll be okay without me? Be just fine. Aside from missing you, I'm more worried about what you'll do without me around to hassle you into good health.
What if I die?
We live our lives to avoid them. Our time still comes. I'm going to miss you and worry about you, but I'm not going to wish that you stayed here because you were scared of the risk. What a supportive, awesome mom. You really don't want to talk. You are like very into looking at those rocks.
The good rock.
That's a good. Honestly, that's my daughter on every walk. She like finds the good rock and then she will carry it for miles.
Amazing. I mean, that's me in a box. So.
Ima shot him.
I feel like what happened to your face is never the right thing to say when you just walk up to a person.
Especially if the other question is, who are you?
Yeah. Designer of these marvels. This entire operation will fall apart without me. Who are you supposed to be? for deployment with the exploration kit. Never would have guessed your trunk is so happy that I'd taken you for a vagabond.
Maybe should have started with weirdness.
Wow.
She's gonna be like that.
That's rude. Shame how far the guild's standards have fallen. These imbeciles
Also
will butcher
notice-
my designs. Wow, you are spiky. Hercule Versa. Okay, I already couldn't go in there.
So the music has really pulled back. It's just some like floaty strings right now.
Yeah, if I go back, it can fade back in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the waves get less salient.
Mm-hmm.
The music's still a bit pulled back. It's not like getting super loud.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's more
really
like
pulled
tree
back.
wind,
Mm-hmm.
tree ruffle.
Because like, yeah, you got a full iteration of sort of the song of the area, and now you've been here a while and you're exploring. So now it's just kind of like, what you deciding? What you thinking?
Yeah, it's just kind of
Oh,
giving you space.
yeah.
Yep.
Then yeah, so if you go up that plank right there. Oh, and talk to that. Don't talk to that person yet.
I was gonna say, he seems like he might be.
He seems like a fella.
See what we can see. Can I take an apple? This is the kind of
Steal that
player I am. Can I pet the
Yoink.
dog? Can I take the apple?
You can go in that building.
You know, can I pet the turtle in Final Fantasy VI? And then later, the turtle is important. Hello. You have no hammer in your hand.
It's fine. It's very strong hands.
Very strong hands.
Punching that wood into submission.
Oh, I can play too. Ow. Oh, am I trying to like just... What is the object of this game?
I think it's basketball. There's a hoop somewhere?
Is there a hoop? Or do I just have to try to hit it to the other ball?
What?
How old am I that I'm just like stealing this ball from this child? I'm probably, what, like 18 or something?
Oh, so you have to be outside the line. That's right. Like, I think it's a basketball game.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Yeah, I like how he shows you. He doesn't tell you. The game is just like, yeah, like, yeah. So the kid's showing you. He like gets ball. Like, see, you stand outside the line.
Okay, so stand outside the line and I try to hit it, I guess. Nice one. Okay, yeah, I'll count that as a success. Look at this beautiful observatory or whatever. Just put glass up there and just look at the stars.
Oh, that is so good.
Jack to dunk on that child. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, little pipsqueak, I can play better than you.
You're on.
Oh, there's a timer. So you can see how many you can make in the time limit. I bet there's an achievement for this, right?
Yeah.
Like some kind of a make however many shots in the time.
I like how there's a little ludic thing, but it's entirely fluff.
The vibraphone in the forest is kind of like that too, where you can sit there and make music on it for a while. Okay, he's saying all aboard. 0 points.
Your time ran out. You lost the game, didn't you? You lost at this walking simulator.
It's time to board. Alright, everybody. Do I stay or do I go? Vote in chat.
I vote you go. I vote you go. So at a certain point...
I know you haven't spent the hours wandering around all our old haunts, but... This is where we make decisions. Can't talk to him, can't take the apple.
What's the point of this game if you can't take the apple?
Water texture.
Yeah, this game is just vibes, and Eastshade is just vibes. A quick little plug for Eastshade.
Well, it's like I can sit there and play that, but ultimately,
Like in Our Flag Means Death, there's no way to mess up vacation, and then spends the next like 20 minutes fixing them because they're messing up vacation.
All right, everyone. I'm just gonna sit here at the decision point. Vote in chat. Should I go on the expedition? Should I, seek my future? Or do I stay in this beautiful place?
I voted.
Yes. Do it. Curious to see if anyone votes. Are there any?
So there's like no more music.
A lot of seeking. Yeah, everyone. We're gamers. We don't want the safe path, right? Seek. How do you not? Do you just go back to your mother? Like, how do you not do it?
Yeah, you just go back. So once it's all aboard time, there's a board there, or there's a board at the other end.
This is fun. It's no longer my perspective. It's because I'm on that boat. Oh, that's a great shot. So cinematic.
It's interesting because you triggered the bells and then went back to talk to the captain. So you didn't get the bells with the music at the end, which I have always done. I've never done in that order, but you don't have to do it the way I've done it. So we had different experiences.
Amazing. It proves your point. Go forth and bring back some materia. Different game, Andrew. Different game. Yeah, so, wait, how do I continue at this point?
I might just pop you back.
Might just pop me back to the same moment. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so pretty.
It's so for Eastshade. So in Eastshade, like you come back, so you're at the dock there. One of like the first things you have to do is watch the sunset.
Really?
Like you're tasked with or not the sunset. It's a solar eclipse, so it looks like a sunset.
Pretty.
Like that's like the task.
I love that. Ugh, I love this article. It's so good, and I'm excited that you said you have kind of like I love when people do like sequels, especially work that I already like. I'm like, ooh, then that means like they're gonna be this like matched set, and they're wonderful.
Hopefully, yeah, that's the idea. Like, so the Oxford Handbook is more because with the article I kind of gave a toolkit and just like here are perspectives like I think are important because I see this intersecting Venn diagram, and so here are like some theories and perspectives that I bring in and I think are useful, and I would encourage people to bring in. And so with the Oxford, I'm a little bit firmer about like here's what pretty well works because of these like traits that are inherent in navigable narratives, and so here are some like sample analyses.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. So what's next for you?
Getting the Oxford chapter out, getting my Rutledge chapter with Kate done, and so that is looking at Outer Wilds. So my lightning talk from
your lightning talk.
Yeah, so expanding that into a whole thing.
Oh, can't wait. That's so exciting. I actually had a student in my game class this summer look at Outer Wilds for one of their analyses.
That.
And I mentioned your talk. So we talked about, I was like, I only just found out what this game was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, because there's too many games that exist.
There are too many games that exist.
I mean, I guess that's a good problem to have, but
it's the best problem.
It does mean that there can be surprising lacuna.
Yes. It means there's something for everyone, and people are going to miss things. Things are going to go under everyone's radars, respectively.
Even things that are considered major. Like, I've never played a Pokemon game. That's shocking to people. Joe's said that I don't think I've played Final.
I've not played Final Fantasy all the way
when we do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've missed that. I obviously missed N64 as we all watched me struggle through Ocarina. Part of Ocarina, we didn't get all the way through it. But yeah, there's always more to look back on, and then there's entire consoles a lot of us missed. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're more of a PC gamer, that sort of opens up its own area of
Yeah.
study versus sticking to stuff that is kind of bounded by the console.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of more of a gradually evolving thing, I think, in PC gaming that makes it kind of hard, because it's like, okay, what's my graphics card? Like, everything's modular, when
Right.
you're like upgrading parts. So it's like in earlier ones you can be a little more platform studiesy, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like that games like and like I said, I sent actually the screenshot here on the screen. I sent this one to my mom because she's like, we're big on like going to botanical gardens, flower photos, things like that. So I was like, look at this. This is a video game. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And to have that reaction of just like, I'm glad games like this exist. And I was like, if there was going to be a game that my mom would sit down and play, it would be something like this.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
this and
she would
Eastshade
just
is, yeah.
wander.
Yeah, you can just wander in Eastshade. You can wander in Everybody's Gone to the Rapture.
Mm-hmm.
As I've said before, once I got so lost that even like the music and the background sounds cut out, like even the birds stopped chirping. I was that lost. I have no sense of direction.
That's fun.
So that was a good time. And I was like, hey, did you know in video games, like even the background sounds cut out at a certain point?
That's funny.
I find these things out. I should be a beta tester.
Yeah. I think I have a similar play style that I want games like this where I can just exist. And
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes try in open world games, I try to act the way I do here, where I just kind of like go through every nook and cranny and look at everything. And again, sometimes the games afford that and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So there are moments in like Breath of the Wild where I ran into issues because of how I wanted to explore the world, because like something popped out at me and I had to fight it and deal with it. Um,
Right. That's
which is
that's my
fine
one
too.
like note about Breath of the Wild. I'm like, can you put on like, casual like endless mode? Like
Right,
just
right.
vibe.
Especially because there is an achievement for uncovering like manually everything on the map instead of just having it revealed. It's like
Mm.
how the place names pop up. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
seen every single one of those through your own wandering. And that was the
Mm.
one where I was like, listen, I love this game, but like I've spent so many hundreds of hours in here already. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's a lot of walking.
I'm
Uh,
on my I think, fifth or sixth playthrough, and I'm still finding Koroks I never found my first like four playthroughs.
I love that. Yeah, there's so many. And there's ones that like I just never got like the time. Some of the ones where you like shoot an arrow, or
Yeah.
have like some of the ones that are requiring a skill and not just finding the person, finding
Right.
the Korok. I've had issues with, but I like that they're game. My example's always Assassin's Creed Origins. How I treated that like a walking simulator, and Joe was like, "Are you gonna play the game, or are you just gonna look at tomb inscriptions?" It's like, shut up.
I am playing the
I
game.
am playing the game. And of course, that game also has tours. So it has a mode that is less Assassin's Creedy, and that
That's what
you can go through and get actual historical tours of places, which so cool.
oh.
So cool. Love that game. And I know a lot of people like the ones that came after it, Odyssey and Valhalla.
Hmm.
Odyssey in particular, I think, is very well loved by folks, but I'm an Egypt person, so
There.
it's all about that. All about that game. So open world games are kind of on that boundary these days where they do a lot of the same things that these games are doing, but the exploration isn't often the point.
Hmm.
And I think games should really I'm going to sound like Joe here for a second. He gets really angry when he's like, you should have a reason. If you're going to make a game an open world game, you should make exploration a part of it.
Hmm.
And therefore having something like, well, let me just climb the tower and get the map revealed. He's like, well, is the game about exploration or isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think he can be a bit of a stickler on some of that stuff, but I think that's a really good point. Or like, if the game is meant to be more linear, but then there's fast travel and there's all this back and forth, like
Hmm.
something like Red Dead Redemption, like maybe there could be a game where like you can design it in such a way where the travel's part of it, and you do have to sit on the horse and take the time it takes to get between areas instead of just zip, there I am.
Hmm.
That can actually be kind of like less immersive in some ways, and But to do that, to not just say, well, we're just going to use this mechanic because it exists, they have to think about how to structure that experience so that it works.
Definitely.
And so a lot of open world games, Will Gibbons and I were talking about this. He recently started and I think abandoned Cyberpunk 2077 because he was like, the world's beautiful, but I just don't want to hang out in it. I don't want to. For as rendered as it is, they don't give you a lot to do. And so like that just shows you can have an open world and not deploy it well and not make someone want to do this, the kind of exploration that is forefront of the so I think a lot of game companies that have the resources to do those massive beautiful worlds could learn something from these games in terms of like just making the space itself something we want to hang out in and really thinking about what are the goals here, what's the gameplay, like what's the experience that this person is going to have, and
Definitely.
what affordances do we give them to have different experiences and just explore.
100%.
So even though you're looking at these very specific types of games, like this toolkit really applies to so many modern games that are all about this open world.
Yeah, one of my other favorite like navigable narrative makers, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's Turkish, like Tonguç Bodor. I have butchered that and I feel bad about that. But he like cranks them out. He has a ton and they're all on Steam.
Some of the games.
So Nafis is one of them. And Bottle, and he started branching out with the names. He used to do like kind of mini series, like Nafis Begins, Nafis Ascends, and then now he's like branching out. Dead Tree of Raccoona was like a really good one. So there was one in particular. I'm blanking on the name. He's getting clever with the names, so now I can't remember them. I would have to double check. But there's a bit like he opens you into this like lovely open world, which he's like starting to do more open world things, and you have to kind of find the bits of story. And as you go through, like eventually you learn, like you get the ability to start running. So it's like, okay, I did a lot of walking and now I can run. And then you get the ability to do like flower surfing. So you're just like whoosh across this beautiful meadow and it's so pretty. And so like just kind of these gradual, as the world gets more open and you explore literally further from the starting point because you have to get back, you then like gain more ability to get around faster.
I love that.
I also want to say, like, I think E-Shade, everything is E-Shade. He's just my favorite.
Yeah, I need to play it. I mean, I bought it because of you, so I'm excited.
One thing they absolutely do right is with the fast travel. So you start with walking, and that's like fine because it kind of starts in an area, and then you get to more areas. Eventually, you buy a bike, and so you can like go faster, but you kind of have to stay on the path. You can't go off-roading as much, so you still have to get off and walk and go through the woods. But you have a bike now, so you can get around a lot faster. And there are places cut off by rivers. You can't like cross the river. But then eventually you get a raft, so you can cross the river.
So and eventually it like unlocks the world more and more.
Yeah, and then you get a boat, so you can actually traverse the river up and down a lot faster. And then like the very last thing you unlock is a tea that fast travels you.
I see. That's
because
cool.
by that point you've explored so much of the world. It's quite big, and yeah, even a bike or a boat is slow. And I think that's just right, like kind of this gradual getting faster.
Yeah, I think that's a neat way to do it. To both have the mechanic later on after you've already done a lot of the exploring, but if the exploring's the point, then yeah, giving you kind of those tools to slowly open it up a little bit. Oh,
yeah,
I love it.
Like if you need to backtrack, if that's what you're vibing, like here's a bike so you can get there faster. Thanks.
That's neat. Thank you so much for being here. I was very excited to do this one. And I think it's just such a good game to play and such a, such a good time. But I love the toolkit. I love a good, here's some ways to approach what you're doing. And I think it's so applicable beyond even just this type of narrative. I think people can use this in any place that we have spatialized audio. This works for kind of any 3D environment. It's just,
for sure.
The difference is the emphasis and the amount of time placed. But yeah, good stuff. I don't remember what next week is. Let's look at my schedule here, figure out what's going on next time. I should look at this in advance, but I never remember to.
Sounds like a whole thing.
At some point, I'm gonna have to like switch. I have like one just long running document. I'm gonna have to like make it in reverse order, maybe, where I put like the most recent things at the top or something. Let's see. Next week is Bill O'Hara, mapping, sound, play, performance, and analysis, and Proteus. We're looking at Proteus.
Oh,
so that's a good follow up to this one.
yeah.
We've had like really nice progressions of certain things, having the two Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior things back to back, and like it's all just been very emergent and fun based on people's schedules and willingness to show up and hang out. But that's next week, so that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait for Oxford. Should be coming out by the end of the year, maybe.
Yeah, our final chapters are in.
So yeah, hopefully in the next couple months.
But...
I'm gonna have to buy it. Ouch.
Yup.
Because I pulled my chapter, so I'm not in it.
I should get a free copy.
So I'm gonna have to spend the money, which is where, if anyone complains about me having ads on this channel, just know that if I ever see money from it, it could be years. Because you need to have a certain threshold before they'll send you a check. But if so, my plan for anything I ever make on this channel is to buy the edited collections with it.
Nice.
Or at least put it toward that. But yeah, good times. It won't. Brian says it won't be years, but I don't know. Because I think it also involves like subscriptions too. I don't think the ads. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I have no concept of how much the ads kick you, but good times. Oh, I just subscribed with Prime. Thank you.
There you go. That helps.
Adorable. That's my first. I think that's one of my first ones.
Yay! Congrats.
Exciting.
You're a real streamer now.
I'm a streamer now. Oh, amazing. But yeah, that's the plan. Is it would basically just go to buy the book so I can feature the people. Because no one's in everything. Not everybody gets comp copies. And people subscribe to Ryan's channel. He mostly just buys presents for us at the end of the year. It's exciting.
That's so cute. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Anyway, let's go enjoy the beautiful weather, because we also have slightly cooler weather happening here.
Yes.
So let's go explore sound walks in the real world.
Yes.
And then spend the evening playing games like this.
I'm going to be sound walking at Cidercade in Austin. So.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
If anyone wants to meet me there.
That sounds perfect. Enjoy that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being here. Love having y'all show up and have such wonderful commentary in the chat and wonderful engagement. Y'all are the best, and this is why we're here, because we're giving kudos, because you're all the best. And I like feeling like I'm getting to a point where I am learning what's in the literature more than there are a lot of things that I never read as in depth as I should have. Like I skimmed it and then I was like, oh, I'll come back to this. And now I have like
the best way to do it.
I have the accountability of I have to read the thing. And it's awesome because now I feel like much more conversant. So
nice.
Thank you all for indulging me in my own selfish research.
Anytime. This is the best way to do it. Oh my god, like this needs to be a thing.
Cozy streams.
Cozy
See you next time. Bye-bye.